Hey, folks, I am Rebecca, blonde in the belly of the beast. Damn it, I was going to say hi, internet friends, and I already
Hey,
screwed it up.
hey, internet friends.
Well, there she is. She's saying it. I have with me Really Graceful. She's host of one of the best channels on YouTube. I've been watching her channel for it's got to be 6 years, maybe 7 years. Is that possible?
6 or 7. We're gonna stop counting at it
I know.
eventually because it's been a long
It's
time.
been a long time. Author of the Deep State Encyclopedia. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me on. I've been watching you since 2016 when you were doing your dating rants and talking so much sense when other people were not.
Oh, it was just terrible. I'm so happy I'm married now. Like, can you imagine being on Tinder in 2023? I'd be suicidal.
No, that it would be awful. And how do you separate the wheat from the chaff on there? I feel like it is just a crazy environment, the
Oh,
dating scene and
God.
everything.
Oh, it's a disaster. Anyway, a good way to start. I always ask my guests how they got started, which is kind of a cop out, but I think it's important because we can use the information from our own genesis to try to bring awakening to the masses. Although at this point, converting normies, I think we're just years beyond that. But still, can you tell me a little bit about how you got started? You've gone real deep. I'm right there with you, but what was your most influential red pilling experience?
Okay, so I have to start at the very beginning because I've had a YouTube channel since 2012, 2013, a very long time, and I posted extremely cringe content on there for a very long time. I'm talking like millennial staple, the Lauren Conrad headbands. I would be teaching you that on YouTube in 2012. I would just be doing that. So that was me back then. And of course, you can't create content like that forever if you don't care about it. I don't really
Yeah.
care about hairstyles that much or whatever. But it was a good time while it lasted, while I was in grad school living in my parents' basement.
Yeah.
So then I got out into the real world, got a real job. I That's when I started doing a lot of the intricate video editing for my job. And then I decided to freelance and quit. So I had
Nice.
a lot of time to research that was freed up. So my first video back to YouTube in 2016, of course, I was paying attention to all the Black Lives Matter stuff. Um, and my first video back was, "Who is George Soros?" So
You just dove right
that
in,
was
didn't you?
so that one got removed from YouTube pretty quickly, but we had a good time while it lasted.
Yeah.
But that's what drove me. I've been making content on hidden history, on politics, on the stuff you're not supposed to talk about, on what the media won't tell you since 2016. And I've learned a lot, um, gone places that I didn't think I would, changed my perspective on things I never thought I would.
Oh yeah.
And eventually, I've compiled all this research. I'm sure you have too, where you have all these links, all these bookmarks, pretty schizo that you have from years and years of research. And when I go back and look at those entries, those things I've saved since 2016, they're not there. And they're not there anymore.
Mhm.
As far as mainstream media articles,
Oh yeah, the
videos.
old memory hole. Yep. Mhm.
So I thought I would forever, put all of the research into one place, which is how I came up with the Deep State Encyclopedia.
Oh, that's so awesome. Yeah, you sent me a copy of your book, and I've been skimming through it, and I'm like, wow. She really. I figured that that's how you wrote it, though, because you really do compile so much information, and it's like, well, what do you do with this? Some of the things I can't even get from like the Wayback Machine. They're just
No.
totally memory hold. It's incredible. You made a recent video about America's destruction and you fleshed out the parallels to the fall of Rome. I talk about this all the time: weak military, cultural decline, money devaluation, being poisoned by the environment. They were getting lead poisoning, bred in circuses. How much time do you think we have left? Do you think it'll happen quickly, or like Rome, there's going to be this slow, painful descent?
Well, I mean, if we look at the parallels between now, they had three major plagues, okay? In Rome, they were marked by three major plagues, which was like smallpox, Ebola, and then kind of like what we had with COVID at the very end. So we could say maybe we're on plague number 2 for the United States, and we're definitely at the part where our money isn't obviously backed in any kind of gold or bullion. And Rome was much the same way. Like, it started out with the silver coins, but then by the end, they had just painted the coins silver to give the impression that they were silver. We're definitely in the bread and circuses phase of all of this, where they had the gladiatorial games every single day. I feel like the news stories that we used to have that would take up a month or even a week, now it's just a Monday news story, and we were moving on to the next thing on Tuesday. So as far as the fall of Rome and now, I don't know. Do we have one more week or 10 more years? I'm not totally sure. But if we go by what they've told us, it looks to be, and I'm not saying this is for sure written in stone because they need to stop that, but 2030 seems like the year everything is going to go down. All the major shift.
I hear you. I don't know if you've driven across country recently, but I did in like 2021, and I just could not believe how bad everything looked, especially in middle America. It was just astonishing how much things had declined over the last 10 to 20 years. And then when I was living in Seattle, the same thing was happening before my very eyes. But it's such a slow burn. I don't think that most people even notice. I think that maybe it's going to be this kind of slow decline into third world status. We're already seeing this infrastructure crumbling, and then all of these trains derailing, things like that. We're being poisoned by our food. I don't know. I mean, part of me hopes for this catastrophic event so that we can hit reset and start hoping for something new. But then in a slow decline, we have more time to prepare. So I'm really torn between being an accelerationist or just wanting a little more time to help my daughter grow up and get prepared for what's going to happen.
Right. I mean, everything's happening and nothing is happening.
That's exactly. That is
everything.
So right.
But I mean, we were talking about this before, but I have a 2-year-old daughter. Obviously, I don't want her to grow up in a world where we own nothing. Like the World Economic Forum has basically predicted for us. I don't want to live in that world, and I'm not here to accept it. And I think more people just need to learn how to say no.
Right.
And each time we repeat the message, of course, it reinforces it. But there is value in saying no, especially as a mother.
That's definitely true. Yeah, and I feel empowered by that. But I guess I didn't realize how ubiquitous all the propaganda and the poisoning was really until I cut out seed oils, and I was like, these fuckers they're in everything. I could not believe how hard it was to cut that out. And the average American thinks that seed oils are healthy. So we're all just being poisoned all the time. Nobody seems to have any idea. And I think in that way, we can awaken normies, at least about that. Crunchy moms on the left, they don't want to do this stuff to their children either, right? Can we join forces on the seed oil thing?
I feel like we can join forces with the purple hair mom. Sure. Like I'm ready to convene when you are.
Yeah, really.
But yeah, I mean, especially as a mom, I feel like, I mean, both me and you, before we became moms, we were pretty awake to what was going on.
Yeah.
But ever since I had a baby, it's like the volume's turned all the way up.
Totally.
And you have to, smack obstacles out of the way that I would have never really thought of before. And a lot of moms are super judgy in regards to like how you're raising your own child within the medical industry with all of, the distractions and whatnot. But I would have never thought that before becoming a mom.
Yeah, totally. It's given me a lot of compassion for judgmental mothers that I used to think were just bitches. And now I'm like, I kind of understand where you're coming from because I've become this judgmental mother. So I don't know what to do, but just join forces with other moms. I think you're onto something with that. On your last few videos, you discussed de-dollarization. And I was wondering if you could explain this concept a little bit to people that may be unfamiliar so that we can talk about it.
Sure. The United States basically has two major things going for us. We have the dollar, which is the default currency of our world, and we have an amazing military, which we we spend lots of money on. We have the largest military budget in the entire world. So the dollar is the power of the dollar is dependent on our confidence to exchange it for goods and services, and our confidence to exchange that dollar for oil in the global or world market. So what's happening now? Are you familiar with the acronym BRICS? BRICS is Brazil, Russia, India, what's the
China.
C? China and South Africa, which they added like in 2010 or something. In 2001, they came up with BRICS as the future leading world economies. So, in order to be a future leading world economy that's emerging, you gotta start buying oil in another currency. So, Russia and China have proposed this petro yuan or the petro ruble, where other countries like I think Japan has signed on to it. Brazil has signed on to it, where they're going to start buying oil in these other currencies, which are, and they're actually joining forces. These BRICS countries are joining forces to create a currency that's backed in gold, allegedly. So that would definitely give it a major advantage over our dollar. And so if our dollar loses that value on the global market, what does that mean for us at home? And the video I made last week was about the parallels between the Weimar Republic and now. And so we would probably see hyperinflation in a major way happening in the United States and in these smaller countries that default currency is the dollar. So that's kind of, on the horizon there. And I said in the video that it's probably one of the main distractions we have right now that's distracting from de-dollarization. Like all the Trump stuff, all the things happening, all the trannies. I'm sorry, can we say trannies? I'm not sure.
Oh, you can say whatever you want. Yeah.
I know that you're not supposed to say that now, but
really, I say trannies all the time.
Trannies. That's what I go to. So we have a lot of distractions in that regard. Are they true distractions? I'm not sure, but that's a major thing. So what does our world look like without our currency, without our dollar? And I would say that it's kind of like a planned obsolescence sort of thing, where the Federal Reserve took us off the gold and silver. Like we got taken off the gold standard back in the 1930s and off the silver standard in 1971. So what did they expect? Like they have this power to boom or bust like total economies. So I think they're targeting ours right now to fulfill the plan that the World Economic Forum has predicted in their predictions, where the United States won't be a leading power in the future by 2030.
Right. So when the U.S. dollar and then the petrodollar collapses and America's no longer able to influence other nations politically, what do you think the primary initial objective for Russia and China will be?
Like, do I think they'll become the world power, the default world power?
Well, I think that this Russia-China alliance is going to be unstable. But there's a lot of concern that China is going to usher in this slave-like relationship with America. But as far as I can tell, it's hard for me not to idolize the Chinese to some degree. And I find myself doing this, and then I'll be like, they're filthy, commie, insect people, get it together. Yeah. But I still do it all the time. I don't, and I do it all the time with Russians. There's probably a better argument to be made for idolizing the Russians, though. But I don't think that, because the Chinese are a homogenous people and they're highly nationalistic, I'm not really sure they're going to be super interested in taking over America from a cultural standpoint. I think obviously they want to get some money out of America, and they don't care much about humanitarian rights and things like that. But I don't think it's going to be the future that Americans fear, that they foresee right now. What do you think China wants from America? What do you think they'll do?
I think to a certain extent, if you look at China's history, you can see that as a country, they weren't a nation that flooded other nations to like, take them over. Like historically, they would not. British went into China and did the whole opium thing and basically derailed them for a time in the early 1900s and derailed their government for a while. And I think they kind of wanted some revenge from that. We had the whole Red Dawn movie. I don't think it's going to go over like Red Dawn. I don't think they're going to start flying in from the sky like once the dollar is down. But I do think to a certain extent, we already have globalism. Like we already have globalism. China is the manufacturer of our world. So what more do they want? Like they have the world's economy in their hand. Like they have the power to just essentially shut down trade across the world. So would they use that as a political tool to get an edge on other countries in a way that we haven't seen before? Like I can foresee that. As far as Russia is concerned, I don't know. Russia plays the good cop, bad cop on the world stage majorly. And I am not sure what the future holds there. I don't really have like anything against Russians. I feel like my dad would slap me if I said that in front of him at the dinner table. But I don't really have anything against Russia. As far as what they're doing now, it seems like they play the good cop, bad cop as far as taking down the New World Order. I mean, they got rid of all the McDonald's in Russia.
Yeah, I know.
They
I'm having a really hard time not sympathizing with the authoritarian nations because I want people to get the Western world in line. And so I see them do this stuff and I'm like, that's awesome. I don't care how they achieved it. It's woman nonsense. I need to contain myself here. But as far as the Chinese are concerned, I do have a bit of hope because they are not going to, how should I put this? They are not going to be sympathetic to certain historical events in ways we have been, that we've been made to feel bad for groups of people. I think the Chinese are going to be like, we don't care about anything World War II related. And they're not going to have that as currency. And so they're just not going to be, it's like an impervious cloak, not caring about some of these historical events because they can't be manipulated in the same way that the Western world can. And that makes me hopeful. It's like, who would you choose as our overlords?
Yeah. Well, Chinese Muslims don't think they're Arabs. You know what I mean? Like it's as far as what you're talking about, they don't have that kind of delusion. They are very nationalistic and they are no BS all the time. Yeah. But I do wonder if we'll even see. I think it's all stage play. I think it's global theater as far as the aggression we have between China and the US. So I think mainly it's like a monetary game, and their main move is this de-dollarization.
Okay, well, I guess I should extinguish that little bit of hope that I have that they're going to be kind overlords that will put our society right. I can't believe I've gone full circle in this. I used to be kind of left-leaning, not a leftist, but think that America was waging all of these endless wars in other countries and that we were the bad guy. And then I've gone like full circle right back to where I was when I was 18. I don't know what the hell is happening with my political orientation, but I look at neocons. I'm like, I have as little in common with you as I do with these rabid leftists. There's something to be said about that, right? I think that this dissident right characteristic really is emerging, and I think it's powerful. And I think that everybody kind of ends up where you and I are, right? You go through this neocon thing and then you're like, oh, the Constitution's not going to help us. And then you're right in conspiracy land.
Yeah, we're right in the middle of conspiracy land, which is actually the real world, what's happening. And used to be like, we're the delusional sort of conspiratards over here. But what have we said? What if we said that hasn't come true?
It's totally true. Yeah, this COVID thing, we're like, it escaped from a lab and everybody's like, you guys are insane. And then 2 years later, CNN is reporting on it. It's like, all right, whatever.
And now did you see where Congressman Thomas Massey came out with that whole screenshot from Anthem, Blue Cross Blue Shield Insurance, where they had the incentivization for doctors to push these COVID vaccines on the patients?
Yeah.
Like we already knew. We already knew.
kind of pisses me off that it's good, I suppose, that they're talking about it, but it's just so late in the game. I mean, everybody's been vaccinated. It's just incredible. And these people that are vaccinated and are having adverse health events from the vaccination have no recourse. No recourse. What are they going to do?
None whatsoever.
Yeah.
And I feel like this week is a major week for that kind of news because there's all sorts of things coming out about the effects of this. But yeah, I mean, what a time to be alive, and what a slow, what a slow news cycle actually as well. The 24-hour news cycle, 7 days a week. Can't get on
Yeah.
this before 2 years later.
I know.
Great job.
I know.
Great job, everyone.
I know, exactly. I guess we should talk about COVID. It should be obvious to everybody at this point that COVID wasn't really about COVID, and this was some sort of social engineering experiment to mentally prepare us for climate change lockdowns. I know you've talked about this extensively on your channel. What do you think this is going to look like, and how are they going to enforce it?
As far as climate change lockdowns are concerned, we can see it take place in India. They basically just shut down the entire economy for a day, except for what is it? Not the first responders, but what is the term that they use? The most precious people in our government, who are the McDonald's workers, Home Depot workers, Amazon workers, policemen, firemen, whatever that word was.
Essential. I can't remember.
Essential workers. Yeah. So it all shut down except for them. And they do that in India now because the smog is so great. And I think they also do it in China as well. But they sing the praises of these COVID lockdowns like they were the greatest thing on earth for the climate, that people weren't driving around, weren't traveling, and weren't emitting, their carbon footprint, which we're all made of carbon, by the way, and we all emit it. So I think we'll see another push to do this sort of work from home thing because all the millennials love that. I work from home. I love it. But all the millennials going to the office on Monday were like, I wish we could go in on our Zoom call. And so I think it will be, I don't know. I think it will be more accepted than COVID was. Because
really,
I think it will. I think it will because it's already been established that the government locks us down and has this power to do so, and all the sheep fall into lockstep. So we've already had the 2 weeks to slow the spread that went over the course of 3 months or however long. So I think people will be, unfortunately, more willing to do that, especially as we enter the whole AI odyssey.
That was my next question. Yeah. Climate lockdowns. I was thinking that I can't imagine they're going to be met with the same kind of compliance. I think even to some degree, I was a normie before COVID happened because I always thought that Americans in particular had this kind of unique spirit to fight the power. And then I'm watching all of these people, all of these conservatives even get the vaccine and comply in ways that I thought would just be impossible in any other time and place. And so when I think about these climate lockdowns, I'm like, there's no way they're going to be able to do this with the same kind of efficiency that they were able to do the COVID regulations with. But perhaps you're right. Perhaps I'm just projecting my own independent spirit on the rest of America. Do you think that we have it in us to resist?
Well, I love that. I love that you believe in the American spirit because I absolutely.
Oh, I don't anymore.
Oh, just kidding. I love that you used to believe in the American spirit. Yeah. Because I definitely think we still have that. I still think it's around. But I think we've been, beat down and emasculated for the men, and the women are becoming more masculine, and we're also focused on things that don't actually matter and stuff like that. But I think if we could get it together, just even for like 10 seconds, we could really change things and reroute for a new future. But it's going to definitely take, I was talking to like a 13-year-old the other day, my husband's cousin. She's 13 and she's in middle school. So I was asking her, how many people in your class or in your school are trans? And she said, over half. So do you think for the coming generation, and she was totally serious, by the way, she said, half cling to the more traditional values, even more so than like what was previously like what our generation did in school. They're going the opposite way. The pendulum swings and they're going the opposite way. And then over half are trannies or think they're non-binary, whatever that means. So
That is just insane. I have a similar experience with somebody that I know. He's 12 and he's mixed race, and he is getting bullied at school because he did like an Indian accent. And so they're calling him racist. And then he told this fat kid in class to be the goalie when they were playing soccer. And so they're calling him like fat phobic. And the worst person, the one that's bullying him the most, is this pansexual girl.
What?
And I know, and he was asking me like what my experience in school was like when I was growing up, and I'm like, "Are you familiar with the game Smear the Queer?"
Smear the Queer. Smear the Queer.
I know, and I just can't believe this is bullying now. Like some pansexual bitch, some like 12-year-old pansexual bitch is like destroying your life because you did a funny accent, even though you're mixed race. It's like how does that not prevent you from getting made fun of in school?
I don't know. That is the craziest thing I've ever heard.
So crazy.
And obviously you must bully your back if I mean he's listening now. You must bully your back for being pansexual,
for
whatever
sure.
That means.
Yeah. That's what I told him too. I'm like, you gotta get this chick in line, or just don't talk to her because she'll use everything to turn it on him for being a man or whatever. But it's just, can you imagine having to go through this? Because when you're like 11 to 14, you're just so awkward and uncomfortable. I was so gawky and I had braces, and like, you're just so uncomfortable in your own skin, and you will do anything for social acceptance.
Yes.
And I just can't imagine what that's like now. It's like everybody's going to make fun of you, or you can say you're pansexual or whatever the hell.
I feel like when I was in high school, it was the emo. We were emo.
Yeah.
That was the counterculture, sort of.
Yeah.
But that didn't involve cutting off your genitals or having hormone therapy replacements or, pretending like you're the other sex. That it definitely wasn't there yet.
Oh, it was just such a narrow window of how you could express yourself without being totally rejected by your peers. Like, I remember getting into that emo thing like just a little bit, and I bought those Janko jeans.
Yes,
and
I know exactly what you're talking about.
And I was just bullied relentlessly. I never wore them again. And that was like a kind of pants I was wearing. I wasn't like, I want to have a dick.
Yeah.
It's just crazy to me. Like, how are kids even supposed to resist this? I didn't expect to be talking about this, but that is totally true. Did you see that viral video? Another aside. Did you see that viral video? It's like Y2K nostalgia, and it's just a kid from 2002 videotaping, just walking through his high school in 2002.
Yes. And I certainly did feel nostalgic about it because no one's looking down at their phones.
Yeah. Yep. And everybody's just waving to each other. Everyone's white. It's like, it just made me want to cry because I look at my high school experience, and I had some problems at my school because of inner city busing from St. Louis, because I grew up in St. Louis, like in the county. Mm-hmm. However, I still had such a wholesome high school experience compared to what children are dealing with these days.
No, same here. Same here. I mean, I grew up outside of Atlanta, so it was very
diverse. What's up. Yeah.
It was very diverse, but I was out in the country, and we didn't have, I mean, there was one kid who ran around with like a tail, who was who was like an anime cat person.
Yeah.
And even he got bullied relentlessly. But I think he's normal now. I think he's like an accountant now.
Yeah, you just got bullied out of it. My high school had 2,500 people. There were no trans people. There was one chick that shaved her head and dressed like a dude. And I remember telling her to get out of our bathroom. Like, I was bullying her because I'm like, listen, you got to choose here. Like, if you're going to dress like a dude, get out.
Yeah. Don't use mural.
Yeah, I know. And I can't even imagine what kids, how many kids, half of 2,500, seriously? Like trans or two-spirit or whatever. These are all meaningless terms anyway. Anyway, I didn't expect you to talk.
I don't even know what half of them mean, and I'm pretty up on it. Like I don't know what any of them mean.
Well, they think that sexuality and gender are entirely separate issues, but then have you been following this Mr. Beast guy?
Oh yeah. Oh yes, yes, yes.
This is the craziest thing ever.
Mhm.
He's married with a kid. And so I think are they gonna stay together?
No, they're
Is she
getting divorced.
okay, yeah, that good for her. But like what's his plan here? Is he gonna continue to put his penis in like women's vaginas, or is he gonna get his penis cut off and then he's gonna be a straight tranny woman? Is that
I don't, I'm not sure. And he's issuing lawsuits left and right for defamation and slander, which do not meet this criteria, which I think it's funny. If you talk about him, he will send you a cease and desist. That's really funny.
yeah.
But I think he's gay now. I think he's just a gay. He's just a gay. Like he's just gay. And he is identifying as a woman now. But he has a child. And
Yeah.
everyone who says that, oh, good for you, you're living your best life, you go.
He
girl.
broke up a family.
No, your child is going to suffer immensely and be so embarrassed of you.
Oh yeah.
But I was looking into all this Mr. Beast stuff last night because he's the most influential YouTuber influencer amongst the younger generation. And so they've seen this guy go from just being a dude to being a woman now and taking this hormone therapy. And what is the effect on the collective psyche of these children watching this? But a lot of the comments are like, Chris has to go. He has to go. So I think maybe we've just had enough. We're at like a breaking point. We've had enough.
Yeah, I mean Gen Z, there's some good stuff coming out of Gen Z. America First came out of Gen Z. And then there's this virginity movement and this gatekeeping women thing. And I think that we're seeing, just like you talked about, we're seeing this this schism in younger generations where they're either going to be staunch traditional dissident right, or they're going to be these insane like transsexual furries or whatever.
Yes.
And I'm totally fine for the trans war because I'm very confident that like Mr. Beast's sidekick is not going to be able to take out a bunch of white conservatives. It's never going to happen. But this is the makings of a society just falling apart. This is kind of a non sequitur, but I have a lot of questions about Bill Gates because you've made a lot of videos about Bill Gates. And when I talk to normies, they still think he's some benevolent man that's trying to cure world hunger and bring modernity to uncivilized cultures, and that he's giving away all of his wealth and everything like that. What do you think, outside of the pending farmland acquisitions, which we'll talk about in a second, is the most insidious thing Bill Gates has done?
Obviously, I mean, vaccines. Obviously, I have to say the vaccines.
Yeah, totally.
Allegedly, he, poisoned an entire village in India and paralyzed a bunch of girls there. You can't find that article online anymore.
Was it polio or was it HPV?
I think it was polio. I think it was polio. And polio anyway is made out of those SV40 seeds that were put into the monkeys, and then they were tainted, and then they made all the vaccines from the tainted seeds from the monkeys, and then the FDA was like, no, it's cool, you can just go ahead and you can just go ahead and keep making those vaccines. And so now we have an uptick in cancers, childhood cancers, ever since Elvis Presley took that vaccine on TV. So yeah, vaccines is it's a pretty bad one, I would say, for Bill. But we have to go back to Bill's origins because he's not a normal guy. He's not just some chump who showed up out of like a garage that he was renting, which is the origin story of every tech startup ever.
No, he was so rich, and he went to a super elite school in Seattle.
And his granddad was the head of the Federal Reserve Bank in Seattle. So So he had it made. What?
Yeah.
he had it made, and so that's his mother, Mary Maxwell, her grandfather. It would actually be his great grandfather, who was head of the Seattle Federal Reserve. So he could have just been like sitting there pressing the money printer, making it go burr, but instead he is sitting here vaccinating the entire world. And now in Africa, we have these polio vaccine-borne polio strains from these vaccines that he's given people. So polio is running rampant in certain states in Africa from these viruses. It's actually from the vaccines themselves.
It's just incredible. I'm only laughing so I don't cry. I don't
Yeah.
think any of this is funny, but like it's just so incredibly preposterous. Um, and I think really brazen to build your entire image on helping third world nations while using them as test instruments to find a way to dominate the entire world. It's such evil genius shit. Like every time I
Yeah.
read something about the New World Order or Klaus Schwab or anything like that, I'm like, these people are like incredible style, Pixar level, like evil geniuses. They just embody them. Like the way Klaus Schwab talks, even it is like there's some sort of cosmic joke being played on us. Do you ever feel like that?
I feel like they're all just characters. Like they took the biggest psychopaths they could find and probably did a little MK Ultra voodoo magic on them so they
Yeah.
wouldn't step out of line. And they're the front facing of whatever company they so decide. Like Bill Gates is managed by Bain and Company, and Bain and Company is a CIA company straight out of Skull and Bones. So
Mhm.
they do all of his PR. They do like Microsoft and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. I guess Melinda just said, peace out to everybody. I'm not part of this anymore. She divorced him when that whole Epstein
Yeah.
allegations came out.
Yeah, which is very suspicious. You think that if he was able to engage in some CYA behavior, she would have just stuck around. But that leads me to believe that there's something wildly incriminating that they're suppressing. And I've
He,
seen the way that he talks about Epstein. It was such canned nonsense. Like, I regret the one photograph we took together. It's like you guys weren't, totally working together. Although Bill Gates seems so asexual to me, I have a hard time believing he was having sex with any of these underage girls.
well, I heard a rumor. This is a rumor, okay? This is a very nasty rumor
Rumor.
as well. It's a rumor that he's all into bondage or something like that, which is a
Ugh.
very disgusting image once I say it. So let's talk about something else. I don't think he vaccinates his own children.
Yeah, he doesn't. And then he like very drastically limits their screen time also. So there are lessons to be learned about how these elites, these tech elites, treat their own children. So Bill Gates, he owns, I think, 220,000 acres of farmland in 18 states, mostly red states. That's probably as of 2021. I'd imagine he's amassed a lot more. Do you think he's doing this to introduce more genetically engineered foods, to contribute to a mass starvation event, or is it for some other evil genius reason?
Well, I think there could be multiple reasons at once, and I think he certainly owns a lot more land than he's letting on because he does so through all these different companies that shell companies that he uses. But he teamed up with Monsanto some odd years ago and funded, I think, $500,000 to millions of dollars for their whole GMO project. So I don't think that whole collaboration necessarily ended because Monsanto owns the world's food supply, and now Bill Gates is one of the largest farmland owners. It is very much like you said, Austin Powers, like evil genius going on. And also, there's this whole vested interest he has, of course, in these fake meats. And then also, there's there's a million different angles, but they're doing vaccines trying to make vaccines in the food supply, like these vaccinated tomatoes where you eat a tomato that's been inoculated. And so you are inoculated by that measure. And so there's no informed consent whatsoever. But as far as a mass starvation event, I think potentially, and I'm curious to know what you think, because we are seeing year after year, ever since COVID ended, where they're attacking our food plants, they're attacking the eggs, the chickens, and now even that huge facility in Texas just yesterday where it exploded and it was like 18,000 cows, dairy cows.
It is highly suspicious. I can't overlook the serendipity with all of these events. However, my apprehension to get behind this is that a mass starvation event is the surest way to create a revolution and a violent revolt amongst the people. Because right now we've got our bread and circuses. Everybody's very comfortable. We're docile, even after the COVID lockdown. But you start holodomoring people and starving out their kids and stuff, people get murdery real fast. Like really 3 weeks of that, and people are ready to put some heads on pikes. So I don't know that they would want to do that. I mean, there are 330 million Americans and more guns than that circulating in our population. I think Bill Gates would be dead in like immediately. I think people would kill him immediately. And we see from this Pelosi thing, their security is not that good. Like Fauci's just walking around and stuff. I can't believe these people aren't more afraid. So I don't know. I don't know what the plan is.
It seems like they're not afraid at all. They're not afraid of any sort of pushback. And I remember the video you did too, I think, on Holodomor. And I mean, what was the conclusion of that? They suppressed all of this information and killed that one journalist, that Welsh journalist who exposed all of it. Stalin went in with all the propaganda and took all the farmland. And what was it? What was that key term?
Collectivized it. Yeah. Yeah.
So is that what Bill Gates is doing? Could he potentially do that? Is that where we're headed? I'm not so sure, because I just tried. I'm big on gardening. Okay. So I saved seeds from last year, and some of the plants that I had saved, and apparently this is well known, I didn't know, but some of the seeds that I had saved from plants I had purchased at Lowe's or Home Depot, they didn't germinate, whereas my non-GMO heirloom seeds did. And so I kind of look at that and I'm like, well, what's going on here? Are they trying to stop us from, we're supposed to register our farms, our gardens, our little gardens now. And what are they doing? They're making these seeds so they don't have any life force whatsoever. So they're one generation seeds.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. But they might just be trying to force us to consume all these GMO foods.
So, and then not disclose it, because even when you go to the grocery store, if you read the label, non-GMO doesn't really mean anything.
Yeah. Nothing really means anything on grocery store labels. Like my friend that used to work at Natural Grocers was telling me that grass-fed beef, you can just feed a cow a handful of grass the day before they're butchered and then call it grass-fed beef. So it says something about the duration of their life, what they've been consuming. I do worry about that, and I worry about the vaccination of animals and consuming that meat, and you never really know what you're getting. This is a bit of an aside, but I think it's funny. But I live in Coeur d'Alene, and it used to be other moms, and like competition. It was like, who has the nicest diamond, and who has the nicest purse, or who has the nicest car and house. And now my friends are like, you don't slaughter your own geese. I know it's so you don't make your own bread. Like you aren't milling your own flour. I think it's so funny that this is getting introduced into the social situations of women and how they compete with one another. And I am here for it. I think it's awesome.
No, I'm here for it too. Like if you want to give me eggs from your backyard chickens, I'm here for it. If we want to start a barter and trade sort of thing, I'm here for it. Because all the mommies, all the like hot moms that I know, they all have backyard chickens.
Yeah. Yep. Totally. Yeah. And that's why I'm seeing all these articles being released about like crunchy trad housewives and how they're actually radical Nazis and stuff. I'm like, I'm sorry that these hot moms with a bunch of kids want to preserve their own vegetables. Like, please, they must be stopped.
They're so radical. They want to make their own bread and not buy Wonder Bread from the supermarket.
I know.
The glyphosate. I'm being put on an FBI watch list at this moment for saying I have a garden.
Yeah, seriously. We are definitely on some kind of FBI watch list. I was on an SPLC hippies like 2 to 3 weeks ago, and I was so proud. I was like,
What'd they say?
finally. I don't know, standard stuff, me being a Nazi. I just had Gypsy Crusader on, and so they were all pissed off about that or whatever. But what they don't realize is every time they attack you, they just make me stronger. They just make me care a little bit less what all these people think about me. And within my social group and within this realm on YouTube, getting an SPLC hit piece was like absolute street cred. Like way to make me so much cooler. You Jays, yeah.
I want to hear what dangerous things you have to say. That's what I feel after reading that.
I know. Like I think I would like this person, right?
Mm-hmm.
So both of us have come to the conclusion that America's doomed. All elites are corrupt. We're being poisoned, propagandized, conditioned to accept bug eating and in our pods with AI friends. It's a bleak future. I know it, you know it, but people get hella pissed and they call me a doom peddler and they're like, what do you want us to do? And I'm like, listen, the first thing is accepting that we're screwed. Like, and then you can build a plan. I think it's a fair criticism. I don't want to be a doom peddler. I'm Christian. I think that hope is a very important thing to have. And I was wondering, what do you think we should do next? We both have young kids. What do you think needs to be done to improve the quality of life of our children while hardening them to some of the things that are going to happen, to the realities of their lives? It's a difficult question, but how do we move forward?
Okay. First, I think as moms, as parents, as just people who live in this country, we need to all learn skills, like marketable skills,
Right.
apocalypse skills, if you will. What is your apocalypse skill? Mine personally, I'm not going to die of starvation with this Irish famine metabolism. And I'm also very scrappy. And
you're like, I really like potatoes and I can make it for the rest of my life of one potato a week. I'll be fine.
You're not going to take me out. You're not. And learning gardening, learning how to use a firearm confidently, effectively, and without harm to yourself or anybody you don't want to cause harm to. Also, as far as the children are concerned, I'm a really big advocate. I went to school to be a teacher, and then I was like, I don't really want to be a teacher. But homeschooling your children or putting them in, there's all kinds of resources. You don't have to be like a weird homeschool family. You could do like the homeschool co-op sort of thing. And close to me, they have outdoor school, which is really, really cool. It's a homeschool co-op that takes place 2 to 3 days a week where you can take your kids and socialize them and have them be outdoors and learn amongst families with your same values instead of sending them into the indoctrination camps. That would be great. That's probably what I'll end up doing. I'll probably end up in homeschool, the top sell with homeschool, because people think it's very daunting. And I personally find it daunting, the idea of having to teach my daughter geometry. That's not going to ever happen to me. I made a 70 in geometry. I think I was like the only 70 I made in school. I just didn't pick it up. So
that's why every community needs like one Asian family, right?
Yeah, even during COVID, we were talking, moms were talking about hiring a teacher amongst like a group of their students, or even with homeschool, like for kindergartners, you top out at 30 minutes. 30 minutes a day is your homeschool curriculum. And I think it maxes out at 4 or 5 hours for high school students. So it's not a huge time investment. It's more of like just a choice and a lifestyle choice. And getting rid of that convenience of having the government babysit your child for 8 hours a day while you're at your work and being taxed.
Exactly.
It boils down to that. It's not quite that simple for some families. I totally understand that it's not a financial future for some families, but I hope that people who get the call will answer it.
I think you're right too, but people also need to reduce the expectation of having a lofty lifestyle. And I know a lot of people, the wife works, but then they send their kid to daycare, and that eats up 80% of her income. And so she's letting somebody raise her child so that she can bring in 20% more income. I just don't believe that you can't reduce your lifestyle quality by 20%. Like, you can't do it. You can't do it.
Yeah.
And I think people are in total denial about this. They're like, there's nothing I can do to live on a one person income. It's like, well, you can move to a tiny house on a little bit of land, and you could have a big garden. It's just people they don't want to do that.
Yeah, a lot of people want to just live in the cities and have that convenience of everything being near them, but really out in the sticks, which is where I am, housing costs are not crazy. I mean,
Mhm.
even with the whole hyperinflation hitting the real estate market, they didn't really see that kind of effect where I'm at. They certainly
Right.
did, but not the same way that the cities did.
That's definitely true. And what nobody, especially on the left, talks about, all I propaganda my entire life about how expensive children are. My kid cost basically nothing until I weaned her. It, Kids are cheap. They are so cheap. They ruin all their clothes. They don't care what they wear. If you aren't, if you don't have a kid with extensive medical needs, your child will be inexpensive. Just breastfeed. It's all you have to do.
Well, I had
But
an article yesterday. It came out yesterday that it was $300,000 to raise a child until they're
there's
18.
no way
I
that's
just don't
true.
believe
Yeah.
I don't believe those
Yeah.
figures. Moms, get your tits out. Like,
Yeah.
nurse your child, because that's the main expense when you have a child or a toddler is that
Uh-huh.
formula expense. It's $50 for a lot of those formulas, and they go quick. So,
Yeah.
and these whole childhood wellness visits, I would recommend like minimizing those as well.
Yeah. Just drastic. Every time you interact with the medical community, and I, used to really trust doctors and everything until my disastrous birth experience. And now it's like every time I interact with a pediatrician or something like that, I'm just increasing the chance that my child has an unnecessary medical intervention. And that's been really hard for me to get my mind around, because when you're worried about your kid, you want reassurance. And
Mhm.
but these people, they just can't be trusted. I don't think that they have anybody's child's best interest at heart.
No, I go to if we take my daughter to the doctor, which she hasn't, I just try to avoid it unless she's really, really sick or needs to go. So she's been
Mhm.
like 3 times. But I go to a lot of moms ask me this. I go to a no insurance doctor. So you pay out of pocket a lot more than you would for, at a regular doctor. Your insurance copay would be like $15. At the doctor I go to, it's $100 a visit or something like that. But he doesn't push the vaccines on me. He doesn't push all the pharmaceutical stuff on me. He doesn't answer to the insurance companies. So that's a huge workaround for if you actually do need care for your child or yourself, because there are those doctors who are out of the insurance network and they're not beholden to that.
That's such great advice. I've heard that from other people, and naturopathic doctors are also not going to put that same kind of vaccine pressure um, on you. Well, we're coming up on an hour, and I've asked you everything that I wanted to. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about?
Well, we could. Can I talk about my book for a minute?
Of course.
So I published the Deep State Encyclopedia in March, and it is almost 450 pages of need to know information as it relates to hidden history, conspiracy. It's for people who know nothing about conspiracies and for people who think they know everything. There's something for everyone. And I designed it in a way where we have these conversations at the dinner table, with your family, with your friends, everything like that. And you get into these debates inevitably. And I wanted to have something where you could take it and go to Christmas or whatever with your family and say, here is irrefutable evidence on what I was speaking about, on what we were arguing about. It's irrefutable. Here are the sources. Here's how it breaks down. And it's in a Reader's Digest sort of format where it's not like 50 pages of a rant. It's straight
Right.
to the point. So it's A to Z. It is We cover topics that are no-nos on YouTube that I can't talk about on my channel, which is like Kalergi plan and, you know, Leo Frank and the rise of the ADL.
Ooh, you made a great video about that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Leo
Did
Frank
that get taken down?
It didn't. Somehow it didn't. It did get
How?
it got all the ads taken off of it forever, like a red bar on it, and it got age restricted, but it's still
God,
up, and I can't even believe it.
that
But
story.
I worked with Mary Fagan. I want to call her Mary Fagan Jr., but that is not. Her name is Mary Fagan. She's the great granddaughter of actually great grandniece of Mary Fagan, official Mary Fagan, who was the victim of Leo Frank. And Leo Frank, of course, is the fella that attacked this 13-year-old girl at his pencil factory and tried to blame it on two Black men. And he was a Jewish individual and head of B'nai B'rith in Atlanta. And so they gave him the full 9 on like the grand jury and everything. He was, everybody thought he was guilty, and he was sentenced, and B'nai B'rith voted him as their president once again while he was in jail, and created the whole defamation league around him being lynched by people who wanted justice for Mary Fagan because he was sentenced to be, I've explained this in like 50 different directions here, but he was sentenced to be lynched as his crime for murdering and raping Mary Fagan. And the judge sentenced that. And the governor actually did a call in for him and said, actually, he's just going to serve life in prison. Mary Fagan's whole not her family, but people who wanted justice for her lynched him in Marietta, Georgia in 1917, I think. And that's how the Anti-Defamation League was created, because they said, oh, you can't do this to Jewish people. You can't say these things about Jewish people. And in fact, we're going to create this entire league that will essentially arise from the ashes of Leo Frank and control speech across the internet now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so. Yeah, and he so clearly did it. So obviously,
guilty, guilty.
Yep.
So anyway, I have that in here. And I have much more. So definitely check it out. It's available on my website, ReallyGraceful.com. Several different formats, ebook, print, everything. So you can definitely check that out.
And I've linked all that information below. So please buy her book, support her. It's so awesome. We were just flipping through it at dinner the other day, like reading stuff to each other. It's a lot. I mean this in the best way possible, but it's a lot of fun.
Good. I'm glad you got something out of that. Whenever I tell people, I'm like, I hope you enjoy it, but it's not so much enjoy. I don't know if you're going to enjoy it, but it is something to combat the censorship that we face and are facing more often in the future. So it's something that's in print. It's not going to get deleted off the internet. You can have it in your hands in your home and win all the arguments with your family as well.
Happy holidays with that book. Yeah, really. This is my guest, Really Graceful. Please check out her channel. She's on Instagram. She's on Twitter. All of her information is below in her link tree. And thank you so much for joining me. It was a pleasure to talk with you.
Thank you so much for having me. I had a great time.
Oh, good. All right. I'll see you soon. We should do this again soon.
Yeah, definitely.
Bye-bye.